Electrocast.
Hold on to your butts.
We are changing the course of history as we see it. That is what Wesley demands.
Now, this affects Iris. Iris, where are you?
What you feel only matters to you.
I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world as it is vexing enough.
Iris, I have a tip for you.
Don't take drugs!
Or whatever movies with Wesley and Iris.
What up, and welcome to Or Whatever Movies. I'm your co-host, Iris, and I'm here with my older brother,
Wesley.
Today we're continuing our natural disaster summer here at Or Whatever Movies with a movie from 1998. Don't want to close my eyes. I don't want to fall asleep because it's Armageddon.
Oh, man. Twister, Twister has kind of inspired this discussion, right?
I'm assuming you went from one to the other, and so my question is, what's next? Deep Impact or Independence Day?
No. Twister's reawakened my nostalgia for 90s disaster movies, of which I'm going to argue that Armageddon is the absolute pinnacle. I mean, what do you got? You got like San Andreas now, or there's multiple volcanoes, or the whole freaking world is going to be destroyed. Nothing would survive, not even bacteria.
Them's some stakes.
Yep. And you know what that makes this movie?
What?
Philosophical. This lands strangely smack in the middle of this weird philosophical period I'm going through regarding movies. So it made me nostalgic for a movie that did fantastically well. Arguably Bruce Willis at the top of his game. It's hard to tell because he made so many crappy Nicolas Cage-like movies during that time. They're peppered with hits and stuff that's critically well regarded, but he made some garbage. This is undoubtedly the best Michael Bay movie. But this also was critically reviled, and people complain about this. Everybody complains about this movie, except Michael Bay and Jerry Bruckheimer, who produced and directed it. But Steve Buscemi is like, I wanted the bigger house. And Billy Bob Thornton was like, I did it for the money. And Bruce Willis is like, I didn't like Michael Bay's directing style, but it was a huge movie and I wanted to do it. So, pay me. And so it's weird that I would regard it was a big time birthday movie for me. I saw this on my birthday in the far off year of 1998 and remember it fondly in that respect. But I don't know, man, something weird is happening to me after Twister.
So to sum it up, you're saying this was a mega hit, but also critically reviled, and that somehow it succeeded in its philosophy, even though the actors were all just there for a payday.
No, 26 years later or whatever it was, succeeded for me philosophically in a weird way.
Gotcha.
So I went with Mom and Dad to the Academy Museum because Mom was like, I'd like to see that before I die. And I'm like, Mom, you live 26 miles or something from it. Let's go right now. So we went. There's lots and lots of screens just playing, random selections from movies. They're actually probably very carefully curated, but without context, without sound, without dialogue, it's really hard to tell what's happening in some of these movies unless you've seen them a million times and know them like the back of your hand, right? And it lent itself to an appreciation that people have of movies in general. Just the virtue that it's on celluloid doesn't mean that it's good. And I've been tearing apart movies lately. As you know, pretty nopey-mopey because things don't feel right. Twisters brought it back a little bit, as wonky as that was. And it made me think of Armageddon because Neil deGrasse Tyson, famed astrophysicist and disciple of Carl Sagan, said Armageddon at the time was the most scientifically inaccurate movie he's ever seen. Per minute, on average, this movie defied the laws of physics more than any other movie in movie history. And that's after Twister.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're all down on the physics and Twisters. And I'm bracing myself for Armageddon, assuming that the physics are super wonky.
Oh, for sure. And then I went to the Academy Museum and I was just like, motion pictures are life and love. And I need to stop ragging on movies because this one, while the critics didn't love it, box office success and a huge crowd pleaser. And maybe that's what it's all about.
And still a crowd pleaser all these years later. I mean, at least for a crowd of one at 8 p.m. on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
I was surprisingly swept up in Armageddon and was shocked when I was completely brought to tears for Chick's father storyline.
That man's not a salesman. That's your daddy.
Oh my.
When the kid comes jumping out with his little American flag to hug the dad that he's never like spoken a word to or touched in his entire life that he can remember, and they hug, and he's got like this wondrous look, and he's hugging him through like a 60-pound spacesuit.
He's not hugging his dad just quite yet. He's hugging a real American hero.
Oh, man.
And gets the privilege of doing so in front of the whole world.
Yeah. Do you think that chick got back with the wife and curbed his gambling habit?
Probably not. I'm sure they were all ruined after fame and getting all of their wishes met, not paying taxes and stuff.
Did you see Bruce Willis's death coming?
Did I? I mean, I definitely had seen this before, but I guess I wasn't anticipating it. I was definitely along for the ride. But of course, a death is fitting for this character who never quits, who never fails.
All go, no quit, big nuts, Harry Stamper?
What other fate could he have succumbed to? I mean, it wasn't inevitable, it wasn't necessary, but it was very much in line with his character, who I thought was supposed to be the epitome of like 90s masculinity. I mean, would you say that these are particularly masculine qualities of never quitting and never failing?
I will make 800 feet. I swear to God I will. This is maybe just the epitome of 90s Bruce Willis, who was probably the epitome of 90s masculinity. He was, there were some meatheads. Big Mike, as they called him, Michael Clark Duncan, was the obvious like muscle-bound dude or whatever. But they were like talking about how they were all on drugs and they were all like big lunkheads. But Bruce Willis was the sort of everyman action star after we had, Rambo and Schwarzenegger and all of his movies and Commando. And then Bruce Willis comes along in Die Hard and you're like, whoa, this isn't exactly the same. He's like a normal looking dude. So that he was definitely meant to be the all-American rough and tumble, but also everyman.
I mean, I'm imagining 26 years later, there has to be feminist commentary on Armageddon. I know this is not what you want to talk about when you want to talk about Armageddon.
Oh, contraire, ma chère.
Well, I mean, then let's get into it. Are all of these hyper-masculine men gang raping the asteroid?
That's not where I anticipated this line of discussion going. But I guess they are drilling and penetrating and then dropping their load. I don't know. Ew. But yeah. I don't know.
Do I need to put a disclaimer on this episode?
I'm not sure that anybody put that forward as symbolism in Armageddon in the same way that John McClane literally saving his wife by undoing the clasp of her corporate Rolex was in Die Hard. I'm not sure that anybody's made that connection for Armageddon, that they were raping the asteroid. They were saving us.
The asteroid that was coming to cleanse the Earth of toxic masculinity.
Yeah, but I mean, in a broader sense, this movie was put out by Disney, and they're the ones that turned down Back to the Future because of the incest angle, spoiler, as they called it. But man, there were some hard moments. Most of it centered around Rockhound. And
oh, yeah.
I swear to God, Harry, she never told me her age. And it's like, ugh. And then like the strip club and the I want to make babies with the it was very awkward, and you're like, man, how did this pass muster in the 90s like this? You know what I mean? He was like gonna marry the stripper, and oh, gross. And then the underage girl, it seemed like a line of dialogue that wasn't worth the ire that it was going to draw, and the fact that I would remember it a quarter century later.
Steve Buscemi, who I've always called Buscemi, but who's called Buscemi in the trailer. He got his teeth fixed after this, right? Did he do this to get his teeth fixed?
So Michael Bay is all up in your grill, and he was like literally, and he would shoot like you from a low, unflattering chin angle. And at the premiere, I think Steve Buscemi, I guess, went up to him and was like, I need to get some dental work. And he's like, no, you don't want to do that. Maybe it was Jerry Bruckheimer, and said, that's part of your charm. You have $1 million mouth. It's really rough, but I don't think he changed it. I think that's his jam. That and the Steve Buscemi eyes.
They tried to make him complicated. He's kind of interesting, right? He's a genius. He's a lech. He is terrified. He's fearless.
He's got space dementia.
But he's also basically just his character from Fargo with a little bit more expendable cash.
AKA Steve Buscemi.
Right, exactly. But it's not like these men don't exist. Is the problem here that we're glorifying him?
Definitely, we were glossing over some of the flaws of these characters in the 90s. But what it all comes out in the wash to be is just likable across the board. Bruce Willis tried to kill Ben Affleck with a shotgun. And we're like, oh, we love him. And we're sad and we get all emotional when Harry dies and stuff. They're roughnecks, so they're meant to be abrasive and not flawless. But still, we love them kind of unreservedly. And that's a weird thing. And we're all caught up in the patriotism and the whole like world uniting. So it's strange how this movie works. And by works, I mean succeeds.
I agree. And it's strange how Harry's character succeeds. Not in terms of the mission, but in terms of his character arc. I was thinking about Harry, and does he have a change? Right? He starts as the man who never quits, who never fails. And he ends as the man who never quits, who never fails. And ultimately saves all of humanity. And so how does he change? Well, I guess he changes from wanting to kill Ben Affleck to wanting to save Ben Affleck.
Not only that, but says supposedly I always thought of you as a son. Did you, Harry?
They always had a love-hate relationship. Was he really upset about his daughter? I guess so. Did he come around? Did she help him come around? Maybe. But I do think his character succeeds in that he embraces the love that he had for Ben Affleck. That was always kind of there.
And he loved him. Ben Affleck loved him in return. AJ loved Harry in return. And he yells as much through his Ben Affleck tears as he's being forced to go back. I love you, Harry. And his voice is all cracking and stuff.
Wait, stop.
Right. But
when he said, it's my job, that really got me. Did that line get you?
It's hard to know. I've lived with this movie so long, but I think what you're talking about is Harry never quitting was always in his best self-interest. It was about self-preservation and getting, ahead or whatever, and him being like the hard-ass oil rig kind of guy. I think that his issue initially with AJ was that AJ had the favor of his daughter. He was a father who was kind of keeping her prisoner on an oil rig with nothing but dudes, and she didn't warm up to him. She was like, calling him Harry and not Dad, and he was frustrated by her turning on him and turning to AJ. And I think he took it out on him a little bit. And then by the end, it really is about sacrifice for his daughter and her fiance and the rest of the world, and not at all about Harry, is what I'm going to argue was his arc.
That's an interesting, more philosophical turn for the Harry character.
See where I am right now?
Yeah, where are you exactly? Tell us.
It's weird, man. It's weird because Armageddon, like Neil deGrasse Tyson says, was the one to rip apart. And yet he said that it's not that it wasn't entertaining, but he has to approach that that's his brand. He has to approach it from a science perspective. I'm not that way because my whole thing has always been about rewatchability and not like, I admired the craftsmanship of that movie, but I will never see it again. And Armageddon, I've seen several times. Why? It's a terrible movie. Is it birthday nostalgia? No. It's such unabashed patriotism packed with stars though, and really strangely moving for an action movie. And the irony of Armageddon I find fascinating. How this movie came about, why it came about, and why it was reviled. Because when you think, let's go see a movie, what do you want to see? This movie, let's pretend you don't know anything about movies, and you're like, who directed it? And someone says, Michael Bay. What's your initial reaction?
That it's going to be sensory overload and butts and boobs.
Well, it definitely was at least one of those things, sensory overload, but in a different way. Kelly and I saw Deadpool and Wolverine. And I know that you and I are not going to discuss that because you're just not like a Marvel person and it requires quite a bit of catching up. But it was an absolute onslaught and we were exhausted by the end of it. And it's just joke. And there's so many references and so many tie-ins and it's like overwhelming. It's arguable that given the cast and not the complexity of the story, but given how they balance so many recognizable names, I could name 20 people involved with Armageddon, by their full name. it's kind of crazy how it all holds together, how it's overwhelming, and yet you're sucked in. And while you're just pummeled in the face, I wasn't exhausted. I was energized by the end of Armageddon. And maybe that was just a patriotic message or whatever. In our discussion of Twisters, we never touched on the fact that
Life is hard, but finding a really great podcast makes the days go by so much easier. Hi, my name is Blue Telusma. I'm a writer, an emotional intelligence coach, and the host of Humanize with Blue Telusma, a podcast where we believe that when you humanize everyone in the room, a great conversation is almost guaranteed. Join us every week here on Electricast as me and my guest co-hosts unpack big topics and interview even bigger personalities with a sense of humor and a dash of mischief. If you're looking for a new best friend in your head, we've got you covered. Electricast.
it's drawing some complaints that you had so much opportunity to talk about global warming. I mean, it seems like earthbound concerns are kind of petty in the face of nothing would survive, including bacteria, for a planet, a global killer asteroid. It's like, it's kind of the insignificance, Carl Sagan's insignificance of everything that you've ever known. Everybody you've ever known or heard of lived and died, wars waged for this one speck, this little tiny grain of sand suspended in a sunbeam. You know, like it's everything is insignificant and all our problems maybe, because if it's all going to be wiped out by one big rock.
That's deep, dude.
Not to be confused with deep impact.
Deep impact. The stakes can't get any higher. I think that there is a white space for a scary movie, scary disaster movie involving the government. And I was also thinking about that scary red phone that kept on giving the general or whatever that commander was all the orders to like kill people.
Yeah,
and I was
Kinsey?
like, if this was And I was like, if this was a scary movie, this would be called The Red Phone.
The Red
Definitely. Phone. That was a scary phone.
Yeah, it's gone to a scale beyond our reckoning. When you kill what I forget what the expression is. You kill a couple people and you're a murderer. You kill millions and you're a conqueror. You know, like this is just, it's too much stakes. Like I said, it all becomes insignificant when you pull out and focus, you know, from a billion miles away or whatever. But what we're doing is we're talking science, and it's really difficult to talk science and Armageddon. And so
Are we
there's
talking
like
science? Are we?
One of these weird things about Armageddon is it was such a huge movie. It was vastly expensive, but it was the first ever time that civilians were allowed near NASA equipment in the facilities, inside the launch pad, in the Apollo 1 site where they had the fire and they lost the astronauts and stuff.
Like filming? Like they were
Yes.
allowed in there for filming?
Correct. NASA let them film actual space shuttle launches. And this was unprecedented access for a movie crew. And so the production value goes through the roof, where there's literally tens of billions of dollars on screen worth of equipment for this movie that they just couldn't have replicated any other way. So NASA is all on board for this movie because of how great Top Gun made the Air Force look so awesome. So this movie, Jerry Bruckheimer is going to be allowed to show how awesome NASA is and stuff. And they made it all romantic and stuff, and how they're saving the world and problem solving. Some criticism that he made NASA look bumbling. But really, when you're talking about natural disasters beyond our reckoning, you just kind of throw stuff at it and see what sticks, right? It could be the Mylar sails deployed that would catch solar winds and stuff. You don't know. Is it more plausible than deep core drilling on an asteroid to 800 feet of something the size of Texas? It's a good thing you identified the fault line within the multi-axis spinning asteroid. But I'm talking more specifically about the physics of things like fire in space and that kind of and major explosion and sound, right, and all that stuff, and Neil deGrasse, and he said it was entertaining, which put me in the position of being in a movie where there's hundreds of millions of dollars aimed towards my entertainment, and I'm like, that movie sucks, right? There's got to be something better. I need to respect the effort, and I need to suspend my disbelief even more to find the joy that I had when I was 22 years old, and maybe in the prime of my like intense movie watching era, where I was full grown adult, could drive myself there, had money to go and see movies and stuff, and just that's kind of what I did. And I love movies. But by and large, I don't enjoy them the same way I did. And I think we needed to get back to Armageddon to rediscover some of that unabashed movie joy. When I worked at Hollywood Video as manager of Hollywood Video, we were only allowed to play Disney movies. So I went through all the Disney animated movies ad nauseum, got kind of sick of playing them. I can't even watch The Lion King anymore. But technically, Armageddon, well, there's only one F word, and it is a Disney movie. So I would put Armageddon on in the store for my own amusement. And that never got old, and people would stop and watch the movie because everyone loved Armageddon.
Yeah, who doesn't love this movie?
Apparently a lot of people.
Let's look at if people really love this. Let's look at the IMDb user reviews and see if people really love this. 8 out of 10 stars, my ultimate guilty pleasure. How do you assign a rating to that?
That's exactly what I would call this movie. Maybe it's not a guilty pleasure anymore because we embrace all the schlock and stuff that we love, but definitely is that. I really like watching Armageddon. Was going to be absolutely shocked at any resistance from you. But once you get into it, you can't help it. You get all swept up and you're like all enjoying yourself and stuff. I agree with this user review.
8 out of 10 stars. Shut your brain off and enjoy the ride.
Sure. I mean, I think one must. And I think that's what I've failed to do for recent extravaganzas, and which I can easily do for Armageddon. And I want to tap into that secret sauce.
4 out of 10 stars. Worse than all the spoofs.
No, that's missing the point. That's the other end, and that's the person I'm trying not to be.
2 out of 10 stars. Badly written and offensive.
I mean, that's not incorrect, I suppose. But it's like spots on a banana. It's still a good banana, even though it's overly sweet and engineered for maximum flavor and stuff.
I mean, perfect for banana bread.
Yeah.
10 out of 10 stars. Are you kidding me? This is my favorite movie of all time. So American, so stupid, so spectacular.
I'm not trying to kid you. I'm kind of on board with that sentiment. It's just so satisfying and crowd pleasing that I don't even notice the garbage. And I'm not sure that I was on board with like, that's patently false or whatever, but kind of. Well, what also blew my mind about this movie is like Michael Bay, you're like, oh, he's a schlock. He's responsible for most of those Transformers movies. And those are just, they get unbearable. And he, is choppy editing and kind of overbearing. But I think this is the sweet spot. And I found a couple of amazing things. Armageddon selected for the Criterion Collection along with The Rock. That's weird, right?
Well, they have to have some fan service in there too.
Fan service, I think, is exactly what I'm getting at. They talked at length about removing the jump scene where they jump the monster armadillo over the canyon for budget reasons and stuff. But then he's like, I got a fan base, a very specific fan base of 13-year-old boys who really want to see this. And so we fought and we kept it in. The monster armadillo. Massive movie vehicle, $1 million production.
They had 2 of them.
Yeah, well, yeah. But that just creating that vehicle as a concept was $1 million. He said that the minigun had no purpose. There was a scene that explained it. Everyone complains about the gun or whatever and why that needed to be on there, especially since Bruce Willis and crew are stripping off all the unnecessary parts, but they leave the giant machine gun on the roof.
Can that even fire in space? Don't you need combustion?
Well, I think you might have air sealed inside the chamber with the powder for the rounds. So you hit the hammer, hits the thing, and it creates the little spark inside, propels the bullet forward. I think you're fine. What are you doing with a gun in space? But why did he keep that gun? And he said, he said, don't be mad at me. But Disney already had a deal in place. And Mattel said vehicles with guns sell way more. Your people were like, hey, you have to make this movie sucky by putting this giant gun on this vehicle so we can sell toys. And Michael Bay was like, sometimes concession, this is a commercial filmmaker who's not in it for art house cred, who's looking like Jerry Bruckheimer for box office return on the end. And he made a vehicle knowing it would make his movie suckier because he had a toy deal in place.
I have a hard time believing that Mattel was that influential. I mean, maybe in late 90s. Okay.
For Disney, that tag Heuer, how do you say that? The watch.
I say Tagura, but it's not that.
There's like a big prominent clock in NASA with the tag label or whatever, and people are like, oh, that's so, like, it wouldn't even be possible. And the BMW being present when they're having their little animal cracker seduction scene or whatever, he's like, yeah, it's not the right one, but they gave us money. And the clock, they could have built a big elaborate NASA clock, or they could use a brand new one that would give them $70,000 that would allow him to do something else with the budget. And NASA gave them all these graces. And he said that movies, sometimes you have to dumb them down a little for wider audiences and for the kids, and so much of me wants to rail against this idea that you're making your movies dumber for the dumb public, which is keeping them dumb. I feel like there should be a purity and exclusion, to the exclusion of dum-dums for the sake of authenticity or for the sake of palpable realness, and I really argue with myself on that front, but then I still love Armageddon. You can see the dumbness in the Transformers, and people are like, that's racist, or that's really demeaning because they make them like all buck-toothed and stupid. I'm like, I don't read very good. And like, oh, it's horrible. And it's what Michael Bay reeks of to me. But it seems like it's all a conscious decision. And Jerry Bruckheimer said, or maybe Michael Bay said, look, I know there's no fire in space, but it's a movie. And that kind of blew my mind, and realized that the filmmakers are not dumb. They're not trying to infect me with their dumbness. They're appealing to the widest audience possible for entertainment purposes, which this movie is only meant to be. Not a message movie, just to be entertaining, in which I think it succeeds wildly.
Because you walked away energized.
Yeah.
To you, being entertained means that it somehow galvanizes you and prepares you to go out and do whatever it is that you need to do in your life. That sounds like your definition of successful entertainment.
Right.
You certainly have to credit the filmmakers with managing an unwieldy production and making it cohesive. This is a big-ass movie with a ton of stars. So, yes, practically speaking, I think what better hands could this be in? And yet you have this nagging, kind of needling feeling of where commerciality, where inclusivity, which is weird to think that those two might be the same, intersect with art and a filmmaker's intent. I don't know, your philosophical moment here is calling into question the whole intent of art.
It's all subjective.
All right. And your rating?
I'm going to give, Armageddon. That's tough, because I don't know if this is a totally, but I think you will totally have fun if you watch Armageddon. You can definitely find things to rip apart, but this is definitely an all right movie. So you're with me, right?
I'm with you, dude. Armageddon was good, and I hate to qualify it by saying for what it is, but we all know what it is. Or at least I think we got closer to understanding it in this discussion, and that's okay. I think it's okay. I mean, is it okay to overlook the egregious misogyny, if that's how it could be summed up? Is it okay to completely sideline and ignore environmental issues of drilling? Maybe not. I don't know. But for going along for the ride, I can't think of a better movie.
Houston, this is one kick-ass ride.
And that's our discussion of Armageddon from 1998. It is officially a good. And I think you should go all the way, Wes. I think that you should just go totally on this.
This is the best asteroid movie ever made.
Best Bruce Willis movie?
Nope.
Die Hard?
Like I said, he's got some misses, but he also has lots of bangers in there, which is why he's Bruce Willis. Dude, it's not even the best Ben Affleck movie. It's not even the best Michael Clark Duncan movie.
It might be the best Owen Wilson movie.
Yeah, Owen Wilson.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Welcome to Transforming 45, the podcast that celebrates the incredible power of passionate voices. I'm your host, Lisa Boat. Join me in conversation with heart-led humans who share their deeply personal stories of transformation. Transforming 45 is here to uplift, connect, and remind you that it's never too late to write your next chapter. So get ready to be inspired, empowered, and transformed. Join me in this community where through powerful storytelling, we heal and reclaim our inherent magic.
Electricast. Hi, everyone. I'm Geraldine Glass, a leader in the field of music as medicine, and I'm excited to share with you my newest release of healing sound, Pentatonic Visions, with Chris Scholler and Electrocast Records. Immerse yourself in ethereal realms where the harmonies of nature, tribal rhythms, and soundscapes blend with the crystal singing bowls. It's out now, streaming on all platforms.
Electrocast.